for the DNB PGTs particularly, they are present. And I'll be very happy if it is an interactive one. So sometimes, even after following the guidelines, we are at a loss because the cases are just like that. They have so much comorbidities that it is often difficult to manage the patients unless we apply our clinical acumen. So this is my first case. Most of the cases are real here, few are semi-real. So she is Miss X, 52-year-old lady with type 2 diabetes mellitus of 10 years, with an HbA1c of 8.5%, presented with fever, chills and flank pain, and she is admitted in the hospital.
Glass.
Oh, actually, sorry, sir. Yeah. So this patient has been admitted, fair control, not very good control of diabetes, presented with fever, chills and flank pain, and admitted in hospital. In our hospital, the initial investigations showed that there is high total leukocyte count. Urine RE and ME showed parcels, 50 to 60 parcels. Urine cultures report was pending at that time. The patient empirically treated with ofloxacin. Symptoms continued and the glycemic status deteriorated. And as the patient's sensorium was also deteriorating, so she was shifted to ITU. At that time, there was very high blood sugar. Even when the patient was waiting for CT scan and the patient was nothing ill per month, at that time also it was 468, so insulin infusion was started. But with increasing doses of insulin, the patient's blood sugar level, it remained at high level. Also, ultimately, it came to up to 16 or 14 units per hour, and finally the blood sugar level started deteriorating, lowering. At that time, when there was lowering of blood sugar, the sensorium again deteriorated. Now the urine culture report came and it was found to be E. coli. And you can see the CT scan picture. There is gas in the system and this bladder. So it is a case of emphysematous pyelonephritis and cystitis, which is very common in diabetic patients. Now, the general condition of the patient deteriorated. There was altered sensorium. The BP became low, 80/60, and meropenem was started. Now, this is the CBT chart after that. The blood sugar level was low now, even with low insulin compared to the previous one. And there was few episodes of hypoglycemia. You can see 45 here, 27 here, and ultimately the insulin was hold and IV glucose was given. And finally, at 5th or 6th day, the patient's blood sugar level stabilized and the insulin infusion rate decreased, and she was put on subcut insulin. At that time, gradually the patient improved, became conscious, afebrile, and she started orally. At that time, subcut insulin was started. So what I wanted to give them a message is that here the patient had 2 episodes of hypoglycemia. One in the beginning, where the patient actually had sepsis. You can see here, the patient had sepsis here. The sensorium deteriorates, and sepsis itself causes hypoglycemia. So this is one occasion when you have to judge on the clinical background that the patient's insulin level should be decreased. And later, when the patient improves, he comes out of the infection, again the blood sugar level falls. So it is the clinical judgment which will show you whether the patient is in deep septicemia or if the patient is improving. And according to that, the insulin level should be adjusted. So a few words about infection and diabetes. We know that uncontrolled diabetes promotes infection, and the mechanism is there is some polymorphonuclear dysfunction which may cause bacterial infection, some complement mediated function opsonization is defective, so maybe fungal infection related to that, and all these are age mediated, advanced lipid end product mediated. And infection produces insulin resistance and uncontrolled hyperglycemia. This is due to release of some pro-inflammatory cytokines. So in the beginning there is hyperglycemia definitely, but when the sepsis supervenes, later then there is increased glucose utilization by the macrophage-based tissues, and so the sepsis causes hypoglycemia. So these things will be kept in mind when you will treat the patient. Now coming to the case 2, he is a 40-year-old male diabetic on metformin and glimepiride with a fair good control of diabetes. HbA1c is 6.8%, but the patient presented with fever with cough for 1 month, Glycemic status deteriorated in this patient. When the patient presented, he was started insulin, diagnosed as gluten positive tuberculosis, and he started ATD and responded within 2 months. The insulin requirements gradually decreased. This is one case where there is good control of diabetes, but infection causes deterioration of this tuberculosis causes deterioration of the glycemic control. You can see the chest X-ray of the patient. Now this is another case, very similar. 66-year-old male diabetic on insulin with poor diabetes control this time, and he presented with fever for 1 month with weight loss and dizziness and diagnosed as miliary tuberculosis. This is his chest X-ray. But here, although the insulin dose was optimized, hypoglycemic episodes in spite of adjustment, and there was gradual deterioration of the patient. So same patient of tuberculosis, but two different presentation regarding the glycemic control. In the first one, there is deterioration of glycemic control. In the second one, there is lowering of the blood sugar level. So what is the cause behind it? What are the possibilities? What are the investigations suggested? Very interested to answer? Alright, go. So serum cortisol in this patient was done. It is a case of miliary tuberculosis. So the adrenal box is a part of that miliary tuberculosis. Yeah, adrenal failure was there, cortisol was low, sodium low, potassium high, and you can see here the enlarged adrenal glands here between this liver and spleen and the class of the diaphragm. This is the adrenal, and it is enlarged. So it is a case of bilateral adrenalitis due to COX. In the initial stage, it is enlarged. Later, it becomes calcified and small. So steroids started and the patient improved, and we can tell that adrenal failure may alter insulin requirement. This is one of the possibilities we should be kept in mind. This is case 4. Mrs. M, 52-year-old woman, hypertension, diabetes, obese, having COPD and hypothyroid. So many comorbidities. This is very common. These kinds of patients with multiple diagnoses, 5, 6, 7 diagnoses, they are often admitted in our female medical ward in DSM hospital. And the patient had optimal control of diabetes, HbA1c less than 7% with 1 gram of metformin and glimepiride 1 milligram. But this is when the patient came to our diabetic OPD, this is actually her blood sugar level. April, May, June, it was good control. In the month of July, there was deterioration, 232, 312. We asked about the compliance of the patient, as well the patient told that no, I am taking drugs regularly, and the glimepiride dose was increased. Next month, the patient landed of hypoglycemia, 60 and 82. What are the possible causes? Actually, the patient had acute exacerbation of COPD. In the busy OPDs, we don't have even time to ask the patients many questions. The patient, in the meantime, in this 1 month time, she actually was admitted in the ward. And at that time, IV steroid was given, and oral steroid with prednisolone, she was discharged. And when she came here, actually she was taking prednisolone. She didn't bother to tell because she has come to diabetic OPD. So we are often not concerned about asking the comorbidities. And when the glimepiride dose increased, actually then the steroid dose was tapered and the patient ended up in hypoglycemia. So proper history taking is very important. And now a quick look at the drugs causing hypoglycemia. All those drugs we not use very much nowadays, but we are using chloroquines, we are using beta blockers, ACE inhibitors, very much common in diabetic patients, ACE inhibitor that increases insulin sensitivity, so may cause hypoglycemia. And also this methimazole, carbimazole, etc. they produce insulin receptor antibody, and so there may be hypoglycemia. And NSAIDs may also cause hypoglycemia. Drugs causing hyperglycemia, the steroids tops the list, but also the thiazide diuretics we use very commonly, the anticonvulsants like phenytoin, pentamidine, nicotinic acid, low HDL is an accompaniment of diabetic patients, and we use niacin, this nicotinic acid. So that may also cause hyperglycemia. The immunosuppressants, the opiates, protease inhibitors, the anti-HIV drugs, and also the atypical antipsychotics like olanzapine, they cause metabolic syndrome like presentation. So drug history is very important in managing brittle diabetes. Now coming to the case 5, a 62-year-old male, type 2 diabetes, 15 years, ESRD for 1 year. I think I will be completing by 2 or 5. This ESRD for 1 year, and the patient is on hemodialysis with fluctuating level of blood glucose. How to manage? Now see his blood sugar level. On the first day, it is quite controlled. Second day, from the pre-lunch, then post-lunch, it becomes increased. Third day, again controlled. Here, next day, it again increased. So, fluctuating very much. What is the cause behind it? Can you guess? I have told that the patient is on hemodialysis. Okay. And on the dialysis day, actually, their insulin requirement is very low. Sometimes we don't take insulin also. So you have to adjust the dose like that. Separate insulin algorithm for dialysis and non-dialysis day. That is ideal. So few causes, few words about this hypoglycemia in CKD. In CKD we know that renal gluconeogenesis is decreased due to substrate deficiency because these patients are usually protein deficient. Gluconeogenesis occurs from where? It is from the protein. So when the patients are not taking protein in care of CKD, then naturally the renal glucose